Aloha, my name is Tara Coyote, and this is an interview with Dr. Dean Shrock. So, just to share before I read his bio, I reached out to him in the summer of 2023 wanting to interview him for the book I am writing, which is called Choose Love Over Fear. When we started the interview, it was on Zoom. I didn't think I would actually publicize it, but halfway through, you can hear him talking. He mentions, hey, this is such a great conversation. We should share this with people because it's so inspiring, which I had been thinking all along. So he read my mind too. So this is just a disclaimer that it's a very informal interview. You can see me. I'm actually in San Francisco in an Airbnb. My hair's back. I don't look super fancy and glamorous, which is totally fine. And is actually probably better because I was less nervous. But it's a very profound conversation. And thank you so much for taking time to listen to it. Just to introduce Dean, because we didn't take time to introduce it because it was a very informal surprise situation. He wrote the fabulous book, Why Love Heals, which I am reading right now. Mind, body, spirit medicine. So I highly recommend everybody check this out. It's on Amazon. I will put the link down below. I am going to read his bio here. Dr. Dean Shrock served for many years as Director of Mind-Body Medicine for a physician management group of 40 cancer centers, where he taught and researched a wellness program that improves survival with cancer. And you'll hear him talk about it. It's pretty darn inspiring. He's the best-selling author of Doctor's Orders Go Fishing. That was his first book, which he talks about. Why Love Heals, Mind, Body, Spirit Medicine, and Living and Thriving, a Mind, Body, Spirit program for wellness. He also co-authored the chapter on Mind, Body Medicine in Dr. Andrew Weil's 2014 text, Integrative Oncology, which he shares at the beginning of the interview, and is one of the spiritual teachers featured in the 2014 international best-selling book, The Power of the Heart. The question I asked right before I started recording, which I'm going to share here because you don't hear me asking it, is what is the evidence behind the fact that love actually heals, which is such a fascinating concept for me. So I asked him, what is the evidence? And then he goes on to explain it. So I'll start the recording and I hope you enjoy it. Please feel free to like and comment on it, and please share it with your friends if you think it would help. I think this video can help cancer thrivers and anybody living, because let's face it, we all go through body maladies, and it's helpful to have tools for navigating in our modern day crazy life. So mahalo for tuning in. So much love and aloha from Kaua'i. Thank you.
You're extremely welcome. One of the things I remember you in your conversation with Dana was talking about scientific references. Yes. There are numbers of them. I just happened to co-author the chapter on mind-body medicine in Dr. Andrew Weil's textbook, Integrative Oncology.
Oh, wow.
So that would be, at the time, I think we did our updated, it goes back to 2016, maybe now, I forget. But at the time, this was the most comprehensive scientific work on other than conventional medical approaches to treating cancer. So that's one thing to consider. And I think this happened, I think, in case you were curious about that, someone actually gave me this book as a gift. And this is going to sound weird, but I normally don't read books like this so much anymore because I've just been so steeped in it. And actually my own insight coming from within me is to skip the research now and go from what comes within. In fact, I was encouraged to write a new book that way. No research, just only what came from within. But certainly if there's research available to support some of this, no question, but I think I'm just offering my own opinion, and you probably know this, but telling stories is actually, in my opinion, more effective and meaningful than citing research. But having said that, because of my training, when there is the research, I like to support it that way as well. And one of the big things that's helped me is looking at quantum physics a little bit, which is highly scientific, although many people think it is theoretical at best. But boy, does that give a scientific underpinning to spirituality.
Okay. Beautiful. I know a little bit about that.
Okay, there's a wonderful woman, her name is Lynn McTaggart. Do you know that person?
I do not know. No.
Okay, she's a journalist, but she is remarkably up to date and easy to understand. So McTaggart, Lynn McTaggart. And
Okay.
you can get on her email list, and she's constantly sending out stuff. But one I would recommend, because I don't like to get on anybody's list normally, but she's usually just so good and supports her point so well.
Okay. Thank you. I'll check that out. That's good to know.
Yeah. And then otherwise, just my book, Why Love Heals. I just
Right.
gathered all the information I could at the time. And much of it is not scientific, but either I joke common sense
Right.
or citing people, very credible people, about an understanding of why love heals. But I don't know if you know this piece. Back in, I think it goes back to 1977 or so. So I'm significantly older than you are. I'm 78. So I've been doing this quite a while. Anyhow, I met a man who was teaching a self-help type program, and it really appealed to me. And that's when I was first exposed to guided imagery and self-hypnosis, and was remarkably surprised at how effective it could be going over years. And I tell that story. But then I was encouraged by spirit through my friend. It turns out he'd been psychic all of his life. And we soon became best friends, even business partners, roommates, and we would meditate daily. And at some point, he began to go into a trance-like state and channel. Do you know what channeling is?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay.
do.
So anyhow, once that started, literally, Tara, every day for 7 years, I spoke through my friend Ken to what we called mentors and master teachers. So that was a huge exposure to, there's a whole other way to know what's true, if that makes sense. You didn't
Yes.
have to have scientific, supposed objective evidence. So the point, what I'm really leading to is in Why Love Heals, I had a good friend named Sharon Bauer who was psychic, and I was working with her. And at some point, she began to channel. And it turns out who was coming through was John the Baptist. Now, there's a part of me that doesn't like to share this kind of information because there's a part that goes, oh, name dropping, but I
Right.
can't tell you how surprised I was by this. And because I've had so much experience, I had every reason to believe in the truth of it, because, I joke as a psychologist, we have, psychiatric diagnoses where people think to talk to God or numbers of spiritual freedom. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
anyhow, so once we got to talking with John at length over a significant time period, I didn't think of myself as a writer at the time because I'd just written the one book, but it was more just talking about what I had taught when I was director of mind body medicine for all these cancer centers. And Penn State University researched the program and found that it literally improved survival with cancer. So I was told you just have to write and tell people what you did. So anyhow, when you read my book, Why Love Heals, so the back of it in particular, I just say to John, hey, what do you want me to say? Here I am. I can be a messenger for you. And that's where I think you'll find the information interesting. Even though it won't be scientific, it couldn't be more important and meaningful in my life. And I
Right.
just decided at that time to go out on a limb and just speak my truth.
I love that you did. It's so important. Good for you. I think that's such an important message, especially these days. So vital.
Yes. So in the end, I concluded that when you align with the core eternal truth of who you are, your soul, whatever words you want to give to the source of all that is, and a deep sense of compassion, love, peace, joy, harmony, everything works better. And so when I was doing my work, teaching this wellness program and asking patients what helped them the most, it wasn't a specific coping skill I taught, like stress management or guided imagery. They said it was because I listened, I cared, and I was supportive and sincere. And I didn't get it at first, but having time to think about it and wanting to try to understand how feeling loved and cared for could lead to remission from cancer, that's when I pulled all this information together and feel extremely comfortable with what I concluded, even though it's not conventional. It's just, like I'm now working with a young man, he's 40s. I don't know how old you are.
I'm 53. I'm a little older than that. I'm 53.
Okay, you look much younger.
Oh, thank you.
So this, I don't want to take up too much of your time here to tell this little story, but this is what I actually shared with Dana, and we may end up helping tell this young man's his story.
Okay.
Anyhow, when I was with all of these cancer centers, I was good friends with many of the people involved, and the HR guy was a good friend, and his wife, and then his brother-in-law actually was the oncologist at the head of all of these centers. And I had an experience where this one patient who I got to know quite well, him and his wife, he was supposed to, when I got to the hospital, requested for his wife to come in. I only learned later he was supposed to die that Monday. I was there on Friday. He really was in bad shape. But we did an inner exercise of all things, even in this bad condition. And he came out of that saying, I know what it is. And because of my experience with it, I thought, oh my God, maybe this is it. So I called back the next day to see how he was, and he'd been discharged from the hospital. Now, in his condition, that couldn't happen. And I mean, he really, so then I even called back the next day, and he was still at home doing much better. So when I saw this physician at another hospital on that Monday, somehow we got in the conversation, and I said how this fellow was at home and he was doing much better. And he was so mad at me. He was so confused. He said immediately, he's dead. And I said, well, I talked to him on Saturday and Sunday, and he's actually at home doing fine. So he had the nurse call the hospital. And in fact, then they confirmed he'd been discharged to home. So now this doctor is still very upset with me. So he made me a bet that this guy would die, but I had to give him 30 days. Well, it's so weird to be so candid about what we really did, but I wanted to make a point, and I really believed that he was going to be okay. So I ended up giving the $100 to him and his wife. But on the 30th day, the doctor actually came to me and had nurses take a picture of him giving the $100 bill. Now, the point of telling you this story is,
wow.
Now this young man I was telling you about is 40, is the nephew of this head oncologist and the son of the HR guy. So I get a phone call from Ed and the HR guy, and he said about his son and would I be willing to help him? And I said, of course. And then he said that Dr. Colquitt, the head physician, said, you do whatever Dean Shrock tells you. Now, he did not talk like that when I worked in those settings because I was still like this oddball in a way. What does psychology or psychologist have to do with cancer? But anyhow, I had gotten this physician's attention so very, very well that now he was adamant that he would like his nephew to work with me and to do whatever I said. So the son, and nephew, when he was first diagnosed, he wasn't even supposed to last a week. He had it was really, really serious. They life flighted him and went to Penn, where he's going to really get good treatment. And actually, where the head oncologist had actually done his training was at the University of Pennsylvania. So everything was, you're not going to make it. Oh, you have no idea how you're alive right now. And that was more than a year ago, and we're still working together. So that's the story that he wants to tell around what he says, how to help people deal with adversity. And I believe there's a way deeper story in terms of that we all come into a human life experience for just that experience and our spiritual growth. And that he would have actually decided to have such an experience even prior to coming here to demonstrate to himself and to others what can be done. So it'll be very, very interesting for me to, at some point, I can't imagine not writing about this and probably writing with him about this. But anyhow, just to give you an idea of that, you can learn to go within and get information about what you really need to do about any life situation, but certainly including a health one and a life-threatening one.
That's a brilliant story. What is it? What does he attribute to his healing, or what do you think it was? I know there's so much to it because I can.
That's okay. Actually, you might be surprised that I think it's, in my experience, I would say my first book was titled Doctor's Orders Go Fishing, about the importance of a will to live, having a much greater balance in your life between doing what you really want to do and all the things you think you should be doing. So he was a classic case of his life was all about making money. He was very good at it. And competing, and he had to win, that kind of thing. But in the meantime, he has a beautiful young wife and 3 young children. One wasn't even a year old. The oldest was maybe 6. And he said, I want to spend more time with my family and do other things. So he was a perfect example of my experience with people who have a great imbalance in their lives. And I actually look at cancer as a symptom, but any symptom is just I call benevolent messenger to let you know something's out of balance. Yeah. And if you rebalance, the cancer has no reason for being, the symptom has no reason for being. So what I found over many years, and I did with him the very first time we met, is had him go inside, which he did very well, very quickly, and bring up an image of his tumors, and then to talk to his tumors and ask the tumors if they could confirm what I said, that if he created a better balance in his life between doing much more of what he really wants and less of this other stuff that was exhausting him, would they go away? And they said, yeah. I said, then I want you to make a deal with your tumors. But now you have to follow through with this. If you make that deal, then you have to follow through. So he was willing to do that. So the next time we met, we did another inner exercise, and I had him, I call it a spirit guide, but it could be just another aspect of ourselves. It could be one soul. But I said, just let an image of this inner wisdom come into your awareness. And he described what looked like a pearl, and he called it a pearl. I said, okay, let's just call it, sounded feminine. Let's just call her Pearl for now. And then we talked to Pearl about what Ryan needs to do as well. And so he does that on his own every day very well. And then, of course, we've been meeting 2 or 3 times a week for this past year. We always end with checking in with Pearl. So those are 2 key things, is you've got to create a much better balance in your life in terms of having much more joy. And the other thing is to learn to go within, where you can access a wisdom that knows exactly what's going on and what you need to do and how to heal.
I totally agree with that. That's a lot of the stuff I talk about too. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
sharing. I definitely think that story should be out there. People in the cancer world, there's so much fear and that whole mindset of, oh no, I'm going to die. Now my life is horrible. And it's like, no, switch your thinking. It could be a great opportunity for growth. It's so, yeah, it's all so much about attitude.
Yeah. In fact, what you just said really struck me. I think that, it's all speculation, and who knows about why we're here, what's it all about? Does life serve a purpose? But everything adds up for me. And remember, I've had all of this experience with talking with what we called mentors and master teachers about, anything at all, but certainly including why we're here and what really matters. And when you think about why we're here, it certainly has to include your soul's growth. And in that process, as Neil Donald Walsh said in his books, Conversations with God, which is a wonderful series, that we have to experience what love is not in order to more fully appreciate what love is. So people have a lot of trouble with the so-called negative aspects of their life, and suffering and so forth. But if our soul's growth is what it's all about, and I think two key things are developing compassion and the ability to really experience joy, then getting your nose rubbed in it is actually a pretty good recipe for your spiritual growth.
Absolutely. It kind of breaks down and makes you have to tune into that. You don't have a choice.
Right. It makes you really think about, and sometimes in real desperation, what can I do? But anyhow, I've said for so many years, so often, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be an easier way.
Right.
But it appears that coming into a physical existence is just one way. It's just one way to further develop your soul's growth among an infinite number. And of course, when you die, you don't die. I'm assuming you're familiar with Anita Morjani's story.
Yes, I had the pleasure of meeting her last year, actually. She's amazing.
Well, she's right on the money in my experience. And she's a delight to watch and listen to. It's a wonderful energy. So that'd give you an understanding then of my background and understanding too spiritually, that when you die, you don't die. In fact, you can't die.
Right.
But that then you just have an opportunity to assess your prior experience and what you want to do next.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just keeps going. Yeah, I always use the phrase that challenging circumstances, and I thought about this with my journey with cancer. It's like an opportunity to shine the diamond of my soul, to shine the diamond of one soul, because it's great challenges. It's like we're under so much pressure, like a diamond is when it's formed, and it's these things that actually transform us for our highest growth. And I love everything you're saying. It's very much in alignment with me.
Oh, good. No, of course, I'm just another voice, but I've been doing this a long time, and I really feel good about the additional experience I've had with the spiritual piece. And I think that's the real missing piece in terms of health and healing and well-being in any way. Again, when you align with your core source, and I explain it better in Why Love Heals, and I could maybe take time to try to now. But when you think about the idea of just being yourself, being authentic, you will never be more yourself than when you resonate with the core truth of who you are, your soul.
Right.
And so actually then health, even I would say emotions, are a wonderful feedback system to let you know whether or not you're aligned or out of balance.
Definitely. Yeah, I work with people with horses. I was trained with Linda Kohanoff, and she talks about how emotions are here to be temporary and just share a message for us. And we're supposed to get the message and work through it, and then metaphorically go back to grazing. So I believe that's, yeah, absolutely right. They're just indicators here.
Yeah, so I certainly wish you well with your book. And, um, at my stage in my life, I'm not that busy, although I anticipating becoming much more busy when, Ryan and I buckle down. And I mean, actually, he's still recovering from a recent brain surgery. And it's even as much as I know, and knowing from within that he's going to make it, it's still spooky when, you have these pretty big bumps in the road, as I'm sure you really understand.
Yeah, yeah. It really brings you into your strength. So Ryan is the man you're talking about, and you're in
Ryan's the
contact.
40-year-old young man.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
he's so fortunate to have you helping him. It's a beautiful relationship you both have.
Yeah, thank you. But, I'm going to guess that we both set this up, that, so, as part of one time they used terms in the voices coming from within about your souls conspire for certain experiences, again, related to your soul's growth. Um, so it'll be interesting to see as we go on, because I've had to introduce a lot of what I believe and have shared with you somewhat slowly with Ryan, but um, because of our connection with Pearl, um, it already introduces and makes it easier for me to explain a bigger picture and how that's at work here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of fun. And remembering some of the other things we did early on. Um, we he would always ask Pearl questions or whatever, and she had one word she would say, "Of course," or something like that. No matter what he asked, if she could do something, of course. So anyhow, I knew this could happen, and when you read Weil, you understand this more. But his son was going to play, his little league baseball game or whatever it was, under the lights for the first time. And he wanted to take his son, but it was going to rain. And so I said, why don't you ask Pearl if she can help you with the weather? Of course.
Ah.
So you can only imagine it didn't rain. And then another time, I think it even had to do with a camping trip, and he wanted to go with the family. He was feeling well enough to do that, but it was concerned again about the weather or whatever. I said, well, why don't you ask Pearl again? She can only imagine. And then it was
Wow.
even interesting how Pearl would remind him, hey, make sure you take some healthy snacks or whatever. So early on, there was a real indication to me that this wasn't just coming from Ryan. He really was tapping into something else.
Yes.
So it's been interesting to show him the power he has, or the power he can connect with, to help him in this way. And invariably, as we went on and met, especially if questions came up about, am I really going to get better? The tumors or Pearl always confirmed that yes, he will. It would be a rough ride at times, but
That's really powerful. And so I'm just curious too, because my whole stance with Journey with Cancer, I've never thought about fighting it or being at war. I just figured if I have cancer in my body, it's here to teach me something, and I might as well love it and work with it rather than be at a war with it. So I never thought of myself as sick. I never thought anything about like, I must get rid of it. I hate it. It's almost like appreciate approaching it from a place of love, and I feel like that's a big reason why it has disappeared from my body. And I'm just curious it sounds like he's taken a similar viewpoint through talking to it and having it almost become his ally.
indeed, and that's why I tell people to look at this as this benevolent messenger, that it's not mad
Right.
at you or you didn't screw up. It's just letting you know you need to make some changes. In fact, I worked early on with one of the real pioneers in what we call psychosocial oncology. Or you remember a physician who would recommend to his patients to imagine their immune systems like Pac-Man gobbling up cancer cells? Well, I actually interned and worked with that doctor, Dr. Carl Simonton.
Okay.
And so when now I'm forgetting why I brought that up.
I was talking about not being at war with your body with
Oh yeah,
cancer.
thank you. Right, and that this was truly an ally, um, because it's helping you or aiding your spiritual growth, and to let you know that you're out of balance. So um, he learned to really think of it that way, and even occasionally, if he was still doubting, and it was understandable, we'd check in. And I think what you've done makes perfect sense to me why you healed. And it's even something that came up in a conversation with Dana about the idea of in communication with her pain. Her pain said to love me. That's what
Mhm.
she needed to do. And so when John the Baptist was explaining this stuff to me, he said it was very, very important, like some others have said, to love what is, to accept what is. And I think the biggest challenge is to trust, is to know that there's a bigger picture at work
Yeah.
and that it's all in our interest. And even if it doesn't seem to be going well or what we like, is if you sounds like you did beautifully, which to me took huge insight on your part, that to accept it as what is, and this messenger or something in your life that was serving a positive purpose
Yes.
to
Yes.
help you rethink about what's important, maybe. Or I like to say to people, how do you want to spend the time you have left? So whether you
Yep.
have a little time or a lot of time. And I think that's healing all by itself. When you are truly doing more of what you really want to do and then aligning, joy is a key aspect of our core.
Joy is so key. Yep. I have a dear friend. She unfortunately passed a few years ago from cancer, but she coined the term "do joy now." It's like, well, all we have is this moment. You got to experience joy. And a big part of my joy, I live in Hawaii, is wearing a mermaid tail and swimming in the ocean with a mermaid tail. So I'm fully all about joy. I've been surrounded by so much death. And I almost died myself, that I have this in, in my head in a very solid way of like, you need to enjoy life now. Like, that's what it's about. So you have some beautiful points here: joy and compassion and love. And it's so important, all of this.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I have a question. In recording this, is it a video recording also or just audio?
It's both. It's both.
Okay, you know what? Is I would like you, if you, and I'm going to assume you would, uh, review this when we're done.
I will.
I've done hundreds of interviews, but I
I'm
don't think I've enjoyed one. I don't think of it as an interview, but our conversation, which I really think makes the best interview, is see what you think about it. And maybe we should actually make this public, post it.
I'm very open to that. That was going through my mind too. Like, this is
Well,
a great conversation others might like to hear. I'm very open to that. I have a whole YouTube channel and all that.
okay, well, if you would be willing to send it to me also, but I'm giving you full permission to make this public. And like you, I'm truly dedicated to, just in a more general way, how to make people happier and healthier. But it just that happens that most of my experience has been working with cancer patients and families. And
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that permission. I love we're on the similar wavelength here.
Oh,
So
good.
I think these keys we're talking about are the most important parts to healing that most people miss because they're so caught up in what medicine should I take and the fear and the pressure. It can be very daunting and heavy. So
Yeah.
it's a
And
great lesson.
I wouldn't want anyone to misunderstand in our conversation here that there isn't a very real merit and benefit in medical approaches, but certainly I believe that there's much more that may be even more important in helping people heal. But
Mhm.
sometimes we need the benefit of the technology um, to get us back in line, or until one's belief is strong enough, or I don't know, just whatever goes on more personally and feeling more in control of your life. Um, but I'm very glad that I've had this opportunity in my life to have had the experiences I've had, and then to be able to, with my considerable experience, really say very comfortably, "Hey, there's more to this." Just like the one doctor, had to come to terms with. I still don't think he understands, honestly, what I did. All he knows is that that patient should be dead, and he
Right.
wasn't. And he had more experience with me as well, but that's just one major story. And then it turns out now that his nephew, is in a very serious situation. And
Okay.
here he is more than a year later.
Yeah. Well, it's great for medical people to know stories like this to help just know it's possible and
Yeah.
help to spread that awareness of hope because
Yeah.
that's
I
what.
said to Ryan that I want this doctor, his uncle, to write the foreword to our book.
Hmm.
And to say in his own words, in his own experience, understanding that, as a doctor, I can tell you that it wasn't just the medical why this young man lived. There was
Right.
no way he should have.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of miracle stories out there. If you start digging into it, you just don't hear it all the time. Like that book, Radical Remission, is incredible, telling stories like that. And one of the big keys to that is a reason to live, also, which is very in alignment for me too, in my healing myself, and the fact that I'm here and able to talk to you as well.
Yeah, that would be Kelly Turner, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's a wonderful resource. But if you connect with Lynn McTaggart, go and look up. I think you'll appreciate too. She has what she calls Power of Eight groups,
Oh,
and tells stories regularly about how these groups get together. And it's like prayer, but it's guided imagery, um, seeing themselves well. And is what David Spiegel showed so many years ago, that when people are able to express their emotions in a safe setting, that and this research was published in the Lancet, that they live significantly longer as a result. And it was a randomized controlled study.
hmm. Yeah, yeah. I have a dear friend in Hawaii that 11, 12 years ago, he was recommended to hospice with stage 4 cancer all throughout his body. And he's become one of my greatest allies. Obviously he healed, but he just experienced spontaneous radical remission, and the medical world studied him, and he's an incredible being. So there's a lot of stories out there. You just don't hear about it because people might not have publicized their story through writing a book or, you know, putting it out there into the public eye. It's so
Yeah.
much power of the mind, as you're saying.
Okay. So we can talk further, but I'm thinking in terms of time. And if you're going to make this public, is maybe keeping it now within 30, 40 minutes.
Sure.
That might appeal to people more than just our rambling on for another time. But you can call me back, or we can set up another time to meet.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much. One question, if you had one thing to say to people going through cancer, what would you say?
Well, it's hard for me to say one without saying the other. But my first book was Doctor's Orders Go Fishing. You have to find the joy in your life. You have to find a reason for living and want to live. I think that's just common sense, but that really is my experience. It's not just about the will to live, because I think any physician would even say, if they had a choice for their patients to have a poor will to live or a good will to live, which would they rather work with?
Right.
But it's about joy. Even John the Baptist told me, you can't know love without knowing joy, is to find the joy in your life, whatever that might be. And the other part would be, though, connecting within. It may be the most important part in the end, because then you have this inner guidance helping you, advising you. Sometimes you even hear the term about your inner doctor. You can consult your inner doctor. But there is a wisdom that lies within. And I'm very comfortable calling it your soul, that again knows exactly why you're here and what you need to do. And because I've done this so much, I've asked a zillion questions. And at one point, I remember making a comment in the vernacular with something that was said. I said, "Oh, I'm with you." And they said, "No, we're with you." And at one time, I was even admonished a bit for asking too many questions. We're here to support you, not just answer your questions. In fact, they said, if we just answered all your questions, all you'd prove is that you follow directions well. You need to be able to make some of these decisions on your own as well. So it's not like you'll always be told just what to do, but the idea of feeling completely safe and loved is pretty special.
I love that. Beautiful. Yeah, I think feeling safe and loved is such a big part of healing. I can definitely relate to that. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. You're such a you have so much wisdom and love and awareness. It's been a real joy and treat to talk with you.
Okay, well, thank you. And I look forward to talking with you again.
Okay, I look forward to it too. Mahalo, aloha.
Okay, bye, Tara.
Bye.